let's start, perhaps, producer Nick.
Hello.
The book came out more than a decade ago, 2004. I wonder if you could, as briefly as possible, give us some idea of its path from page to screen.
A 10-year summary.
A couple of minutes.
We had to wait. I don't know if anybody knows, but New Line had the rights originally, and they were going to make it, I think, with a view to Peter Jackson directing it. And fortuitously, that never happened. And in about 2009, I had read the book. It's one of my favourite books. I mean, I don't know who else has read it here. It's such a spectacular piece of writing. I think we should take a breath to thank Susanna for writing such a fantastic piece of material. Really fabulous. And then I was very friendly with Nick Marsden and Tally Garner at the time and Dixie Linder, who are Cuba. And we decided between ourselves that we should take this idea as a television piece. I think they had always assumed that it would be a feature film when it was developed by New Line. When I read the book, I never felt, and I know talking to Nick, who's out there in the audience somewhere, never really felt that it fell into 3 parts and it was an enormous tome. And so we came up with the idea of making it as a 6-parter, 6 hours, which seemed right at the time, until Peter turned around and said, I can't do it in 6, give me another hour. And then we went to Ben Stevenson at the BBC, and I'd like to second what Charlotte said earlier this evening. He immediately got it. I mean, literally just went, it's so perfect for BBC One. It takes period drama and then special effects and the supernatural and mixes them up into something completely original and new. And he backed it immediately right from the get-go. And that was wonderful for us. And that's sort of a potted history to start with.
And Peter, you were tasked with taking this weighty tome and compressing it, condensing it into 7 hours. Where did you begin? There's so much to work with.
I can't remember. I think I just kind of divided the book into chunks and of 250 or so pages and said that that's where an episode would start and that's where an episode would end. But
that's so unmagical.
But I think we kind of ate up more book. I think these 2 episodes probably represent about 400 pages. And then as the book itself gets going, it takes, it kind of takes a while to come to its point. And then as it speeds up, I think the last episode is probably 50 pages. But I mean, it was a daunting task. But really it was kind of made possible because it was such a joy to do, because it's such a wonderful world that Susanna created, that it always felt like you were mining treasures and things, and it was so wonderful to work with Toby and Nick on developing it and shaping it, and it's been a very kind of in-depth collaboration from day one between all of us. And as we've gone over the last 3 years, we've accumulated more and more collaborators who've also been completely essential to it. So it's really been a huge team effort.
And for the actors, let's start with Marc. How did you first hear about the role? How did you come to get it?
Well, I hadn't read the book, but I'd seen the book cover. It was kind of like an iconic cover that I'd seen in bookshops. And a year before it all came about, I was in South Africa having lunch with Richard and Judy. Seriously, Richard Madeley and Judy Finnegan. And at one point, Judy stopped and said, if they ever make Jonathan Strange and Mr Norrell, you have to play the gentleman with the thistledown hair. Just like that, like from nowhere. And I said, oh, what's that then? And they said it was their favourite book. Then I finished the job I was doing, and I took 7 months off, and I went around Europe. And then suddenly I heard that they were making this show, and that Bertie and Eddie were cast, and I knew it was a really big deal. And that they weren't actually advertising for the gentleman, so I think they were going to give it to some big hotshot American star. But anyway, so I said to my agent Julie Sanguinetti, I've got to get in for an audition for this, and I just really prepared for a week, I remember. And I actually, I came in and met Toby, and I'd done a spell. It's called a sigil, and it's an actual spell that I learnt how to do. Somebody taught me how to do it, and I brought it into the thing, and I presented it to Toby, and I said, I am the gentleman with the thistle down there. And I
felt
said,
compelled to give him the job.
I
Is this
said,
legal? I mean,
this is a spell, and if you take it, all shit's going to happen. You know, it's all going to kick off. And I kind of went in with that kind of flavour, and I got the gig. So.
The lesson to all actors there is
Yeah.
you hypnotise your,
Exactly.
your director, you're right in there. How about you, Bertie? How did you first become aware of the novel and the part?
I read it. I was given it by a friend who knew I'd love it, and like most books that people give me, it sat on my shelf for a couple of years, and then for some reason I picked it up, and she was right. I absolutely ate it up, and used to cast myself in the film of it, thinking I'd never have a chance at the role because some hotshot American would get it. And thank God all the Americans must have said no.
They're busy.
And I was in America doing Matilda the musical on Broadway, and my agent Michael Simmons rang up and said,
You got to plug
they're
your
doing
agent.
this thing, Jonathan Strange Mr Norrell, and Kate Rose James wants you to tape for it, and I sort of fell off my chair, and similarly cast all the spells I knew to do it, and then Nick and Toby came out to. I taped from my bedroom in Williamsburg and sent those off, and some weeks later they came out and saw the show, which you sort of know you're onto a good thing when people are prepared to come, well, funded by the BBC, to come to New York for a weekend.
We must go to New York.
Yeah, must have theatre. Can't imagine what enticed them. But when we and it was sort of, you kind of, I think you just sort of know when you've got a job, don't you? And we sat in the same bedroom, Toby with his film camera, getting all handheld, and did some work on it, and it was wonderful. It's a dream. Really is a dream.
I
come
should
true.
say both of the castings that came through for these guys were so unbelievable. I mean, literally, they both. It's one of those moments. I think Toby would say that as well. Wouldn't you just sort of stop?
You sure that wasn't Marc's spell?
Yeah, probably was. Yeah.
No, I mean, I remember Marc being, it was one of the most remarkable kind of casting sessions I've ever had. They're supposed to be about 20 minutes long, and it was an hour and a half before I let you out of the room. And we just did loads of scenes. Let's try another one. And I think you didn't feel like you necessarily...
I didn't feel like I got it, no. It was getting the voice, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we were certainly on the right flavour.
And I
And the
kept-
way we went with that is how we shot it, didn't we? We just kind of, we kept rolling.
Try it
and
again,
trying
try it
all
again.
sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. And
It was great fun, but I knew it was gold, and I thought this is incredible. I can't wait to show this to the guys, and the same with Bertie as well. We just sort of sat in your apartment, didn't we, running scenes and kind of trying it out and thinking, and we were walking away going, how are we going to sell this in? And we were drawing wigs on them on their sort of spotlight photographs, and kind of trying to work out the shapes of them, but.
What was it, Bertie, about you mentioned that when you read the novel you were just entranced by the Jonathan Strange character. What was it that you found so intriguing? Made you think, yes, that's me?
Well, I don't know if I thought it was me. I just when you read a book you love, don't you feel some kinship with the protagonist, don't you? I suppose, and I mean I do feel a kinship with Jonathan Strange, but I just thought it was the most amazing story I'd read in an awfully long time. So that was then, and then when I got to read Peter's script, one thing that's so striking, I mean, what's brilliant about it as an acting opportunity, is that the horizon of the story keeps receding, a bit like when you're out for a walk in the hills or the mountains and you get to the top of a tall hill and you think you'll have reached the summit, and then there's another one looming there, and it carries on surprising you about where it's going. It's sort of story about somebody coming of age, but he comes of age, as we all do in life, many times. He doesn't sort of grow up and then he's grown up. He grows up from this sort of fairly hapless gentleman, wastrel, and he goes through certain things, comes of a man, his father dies, goes to war. But each time you sort of think he's arrived, the horizon recedes, and so you kind of start off in Henry IV Part 1 and you end up in King Lear. And so the opportunity in just 7 hours to tell all of that story and to show off my acting. It's like, it was a canny move, but it's just a brilliant story. And you know, when you come across great material, there's no faking it. I mean, it's like nothing else. I mean, you can't spin straw into gold, but when you sort of see real gold, you just kind of got to throw everything you've got at it. And
it's interesting. I wonder, in terms of how you approached depicting magic and the magical, and I imagine this is for probably all three of you. We're in an age where CGI means any illusion is possible in any film. How did you decide when you were going to use effects and to what extent you were going to use them?
Well, to an extent, it's possible in film. It's not wholly possible or affordable.
Everything is possible,
in
but
television.
is it affordable? I think that sort of, I mean, also it's not just sort of financially whether it's affordable, but we had so much material. The book is so huge. There's so many stories within stories in the book that you have to do the same calculation for that as you do with like CGI and things like that. Which is, does it warrant the real estate that is the screen time? That we've got. We've got this limited amount of time to tell each story, each episode, and so everything had to play for the character, for the story, and really run and really hone for those moments and things like that. And it's the same when it comes to effect sequences and things like that, because when we first, you do a draft and everything has magic in it, and then you sort of go, well, look, we can't achieve all of this. We're going to have to sort of work it down, and do sort of other stuff. And I think what I like about it is all those solutions that you get. It always forces you to be cleverer, and this is something I learnt on Doctor Who. And I remember talking to Stephen, and he was saying, well, economy, gave birth to the greatest sci-fi idea in television, which if they could have afforded to build a massive time-traveling spaceship, they would have done, but they couldn't, so they went to the prop store and got kind of a police public school call box out there, and that's the best idea in TV history. And so it always forces you into sort of more clever avenues. But we did have a CGI budget. It was good, but what we tried to do is use it as little as possible, so that when we did do it, that the effects were of a different quality that we're used to seeing on TV, and so that and that's just about detail.
It also recognises the tone that's in Susanna's writing, doesn't it? That one of the things I loved so much about the novel was that the magic is credible, it's grand, and it's sort of often off stage. You hear about these tremendous feats of the weather. I mean, the weather is not small. The weather's a massive event, but you're kind of hearing about these things.
It had to be
and
elemental.
Somehow it's much more real and credible.
Well,
as
it
a
needed
result.
to come from somewhere. It needed to come from nature, and what I didn't want it to be was sort of. We've seen kind of Harry Potter magic and the lightning and the pink lightning, all sorts of stuff, and kind of light from nowhere. But we wanted it to feel physical, that it came from somewhere. We were building, we had a logic of where the magic came from, what the true power is, and and it's from nature, and so therefore, all the kind of spells that you'll see through the series always have a kind of tangible element to them, a physical element that we could use in the shooting of it, as well as to sort of kind of really run with in the CGI.
And we never made them. They never quite kind of work. They're never properly controllable. They always have effects that are unlooked for. They may achieve what you want them to achieve, but they probably won't do it in the way that you want them to.
A bit like actors.
And if you use them to solve a problem, it'll probably cause a greater problem. Yeah.
Yes.
But we had
It's a good metaphor. Let's move on.
good message. We kind of thought like magic was a little like the atom bomb, that the kind of creation of the atom bomb, that it was a terrible and unpredictable power that once it was out of the box, it couldn't be put back in again.
I think the thing is with science, you can work out the science of something and it can be very precise, and you can think of cause and effect, and that's what they all did, but what they didn't see was what happens after that and what man does to that. And that's what this is a study of, continually looking at what people do with power, how they kind of misuse it, and what they do to each other and this kind of stuff. That's just one of the themes of the book.
I love that so much of the magic is kind of lo-fi, and things like the simplest of magic tricks really kind of put a smile on my face. Like whenever we summon Marc, he appears with no computer trickery involved at all. Somebody obscures him and the camera, the frame sort of wipes, and there he is. Someone who was not there is there, or he's there in a scene and only some people can see it. And that requires no trickery or expense. It just requires imagination. And that's theatre and storytelling and film and drama is all about all of our collective imaginations, which is a kind of magic, actually. And we're all claiming to be someone we're not, and everybody's choosing to believe in that. And that is a kind of magic that you can do for free, which is just so exciting.
But that scene with the horses, that's one of the best things I've ever seen on telly. That's unbelievable.
And I just want to
Wait
say,
for the Battle of Waterloo.
Yeah, exactly. If there's anybody here from Milk in the house, Milk did all our visual effects. I just want to say thank you, because they're bloody amazing when we do them.
Yeah. There's a whole world in the book of the fable and mythology. There's endless footnotes, and of course there's the real historical background, which is also intertwined into the narrative. I wondered, how did you go about invoking that in this story, basically making it feel like it's a bigger canvas than it actually is? That's probably a Peter question first.
I don't know. It's one of the things that kind of would normally turn me off about fantasy, certain fantasy literature, is how dependent it is on mythology, and how alienating that can be if you open a book and it's about the seven sons of Hrothgar and the fable of the lost sword and all this rubbish that you have to get your head around before you can understand the story. Forgive me, but
I'll do it.
It's I think the mythology of the world of the Raven King and the great magicians of the Golden Age and their achievements. It's all there in the book, and it's there as kind of texture, and colour, and something that gives kind of life and imagination and a sense of a bigger world to the series and to the book. But it's completely, you don't need an understanding of it to follow the story. You don't need an understanding to follow the story of the book. And I think really what we wanted to concentrate on with the TV series was for it not to be overpowered by the mythology or the effects or the fact that it was a kind of lavish costume drama, but to concentrate on a human, understandable character story for our 9 or 10 leading characters or whatever it is, which would carry us through 7 hours. And if we got that right, then all of the other stuff was icing on the top, really.
What did you obsess about period detail? I mean, it seems...
Well, it's easy to do period
convincing,
detail when
certainly.
you've got David Roger as your designer, who's up there. And I just think he's one of our great talents in television. I think and in opera and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
He's an amazing... for us, he was an amazing find, and we just... we had a lot of artists like that we kind of let loose and trusted mostly, and played with all of those things. And I think that when it comes to detail and accuracy, again, it's all about affirming kind of that this is a real world that the magic is coming from. Because if it starts off and it feels flimsy, it feels a bit fantastical or anything like that, then you just kind of go, I'm not sure about this. But it had to sort of come from the ground up. It had to feel raw and real and dirty, and kind of getting sort of dirt and grubbiness into the world and TV is actually really difficult. You know, everything wants to come out really tidy and really clean, and everybody wants to do their job properly, and all the streets are swept. And you actually want to get the horse shit onto the streets and you go and kind of that and really kind of mess it up, and that takes time. And so it's sort of quite hard to kind of get that grit and to push for it, really. But it's really worth it.
The key with fantasy is that you've got to really believe that world. Otherwise, you're just not going to be carried along on the story. So therefore, production design, production values, direction, all that stuff that really creates a world that is seamless and very consistent. I think that's really important. And Toby did that brilliantly. David did that brilliantly. We had some other fantastic people. Barbara Kidd, who did the costumes, did an amazing job. Just keeping that consistency of look and making sure that all those departments are talking to each other. I'm very proud of a couple of things, well, a lot of it, but the Lost Hope, where the tree is and where all the dancers are, that week was an amazing week because it really brought together a whole vision between production design, the way that the costumes were designed, all the makeups that were sort of slightly bizarre and twisted, coming to form something with the choreography and the movement and the dance and the music that we used is something that is really hard to do. and it comes off sort of looking seamless, and trying to do that consistently in every environment that we're in, to do justice to Susanna's writing and then to your script.
And to hit every beat, every character beat,
yeah.
every story beat, and not drop a single ball
Absolutely.
Was the goal, you know. And I think it sort of took immense sort of concentration and support and kind of just hard work, just elbow grease.
And everybody bringing their A game. Absolutely everybody who worked on the show understood it was something special. It was not your normal run-of-the-mill piece when we were all going to do our absolute best. And I think everybody would, the actors every day they came to set and brought absolutely the best.
It helps to have good leadership, and actually you were talking about laying people loose, and I think it helps as well that the document at the centre of it was so fully imagined, so everybody came to the table with a very full sense of what that world we were trying to create was, but then to actually be allowed room to do what everybody does best is a triumph of leadership. It's quite rare, in my experience, to be allowed room to actually bring all of what you can do, and that's what we got. So I mean, that's really rare.